Katherine Mary Knight, born in 1955 in Tenterfield, New South Wales, was not just a woman with a violent temper. She was a storm of possessive rage that destroyed every relationship she ever entered. By the time her final monstrous crime occurred, she had left a long trail of victims, always men who had tried to escape her control. Her actions in February 2000 would earn her a unique and damning place in the annals of Australian criminal justice. Knight's life was defined by an escalating pattern of domestic violence and criminal threats. She worked as an abattoir laborer for years, a job she excelled at and often called her dream job. This proficiency with knives, specifically in boning, skinning, and cutting meat, was a chilling prelude to the final act of her crimes. Her first victim of serious domestic violence was her husband, David Kellett. On their wedding night in 1974, she attempted to strangle him after he fell asleep following intimacy, accusing him of indifference. The marriage that followed was defined by Kellett's fear. On one occasion, while heavily pregnant, Knight severely fractured Kellett's skull by hitting him with a frying pan simply because he was late home from a darts competition. Kellett fled in fear for his life. The violence persisted even after they separated. When Kellett left her for another woman, Knight briefly had a psychotic episode. In a terrifying display of rage, she placed their 2-month-old baby, Melissa, on a railway line just moments before a train was due to pass, only removing the child at the last second. Later, desperate to find Kellett, she kidnapped a woman at knife point, slashed her face, and demanded to be driven to Queensland. She was eventually disarmed by police using brooms and committed to a psychiatric hospital, but no significant charges resulted, allowing her cycle of violence to continue unchecked. In 1986, Knight met her next partner, David Saunders, a minor. The abuse continued, but with even greater sadism. After an argument in May 1987, Knight, seeking to punish Saunders for perceived infidelity, viciously took the life of his 2-month-old dingo puppy right in front of him. She reportedly told him this was a warning of what would happen if he ever cheated. She later stabbed him in the abdomen with a pair of scissors and subsequently secured an apprehended violence order against him, exploiting the system after he went into hiding for his own safety. The victim of Knight's ultimate, unimaginable crime was her de facto partner, John Charles Thomas Price, a local miner in Aberdeen, New South Wales. The couple's relationship was volatile, marked by Knight's extreme possessiveness and violence, which Price often recorded in a journal, fearing what she might do. Price had tried repeatedly to end the relationship, a desire for separation that proved to be his death sentence. He told people that if he ever went missing, Knight was responsible. In February 2000, after Price refused to take her back following yet another violent separation, Knight acted on her threats. Waiting until Price was asleep, she entered his bedroom and launched a sustained, brutal attack. She stabbed him repeatedly. Reports vary, but she inflicted at least 37 stab wounds in total. Price, terrified, tried to flee, staggering from the bedroom, but Knight pursued him relentlessly, stabbing him in the back as he collapsed and died from catastrophic blood loss. The subsequent actions were what cemented Katherine Knight's status as one of Australia's most notorious murderers. Utilizing the specialized skills learned in the abattoir, Knight meticulously skinned Price's entire body. She then transported his skin to the living room, where she draped it over a door arch and hung it from a meat hook she had recently installed. She proceeded to decapitate his corpse. In the kitchen, Knight began cooking. She cooked his head in a pot on the stove and sliced portions of his buttocks, which she baked and served alongside roasted vegetables and gravy. Her plan was horrific. She intended to serve this gruesome meal to Price's adult children upon their return home. Fortunately, Knight was stopped before she could execute this final act of malice. Price had failed to show up for work, and an employee went to check on him. The employee discovered the horrifying scene and immediately alerted the police. When law enforcement arrived, they found Knight asleep in the bedroom, seemingly exhausted after her night of atrocity. She was arrested immediately. The details of the crime shocked the nation and the global community. Katherine Knight was charged with the murder of John Price. The case went to trial where Knight eventually pleaded guilty to murder. The defense attempted to argue for a lesser sentence, citing her troubled childhood and borderline personality disorder, but the sheer savagery and premeditation of the acts, particularly the extensive post-mortem mutilation intended to inflict psychological trauma on the victim's family, were paramount to the court. On October 26, 2001, Supreme Court Justice Barry O'Keefe handed down the sentence. He described the crime as monstrous and unspeakable, noting the profound level of moral culpability displayed. Justice O'Keefe delivered a landmark judgment, sentencing Katherine Knight to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. This was a historic moment. Katherine Knight became the first woman in Australian legal history to receive this sentence, a punishment typically reserved for the nation's most cold-blooded and repeat male offenders. The severity of the sentence reflected the court's judgment that she was an irredeemable danger to the community and that the circumstances of the murder were in the worst category of homicide. Knight appealed the sentence in 2006, arguing that the without parole determination was too harsh and constituted cruel and unusual punishment. The New South Wales Court of Criminal Appeal emphatically rejected her appeal, upholding the original sentence. Chief Justice James Spiegelman stated that the crime was of such an extraordinary and unique horror that the severity of the sentence was absolutely necessary. Katherine Knight remains incarcerated today at the Silverwater Women's Correctional Center, serving her life sentence with no prospect of release.